Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. This is Mark Young with XLM Solutions. I'm going to give one more minute just to get a couple more people join and then start. See you in a minute. All right, let's get started here. Once again, this is Mark Young with XLM Solutions, and thank you for joining this webinar on SOLIDWORKS PDM SharePoint integration overview. If you have any questions as we go, please type them into chat. I will answer them as appropriate as I see them, or definitely at the end of the webinar, there will be time for Q&A. Quick overview of XLM Solutions. For those of you who do not know us, we're a complete PLM PDM solution provider. We've been in business since 2005, so we have over 17 years of providing our expertise in helping companies implement their PDM and PLM systems with key expertise in the Dassault PLM solutions, that being obviously SolidWorks PDM that we're talking about today, but also the other Dassault PLM solutions like Innovia 3D Experience Platform, SolidWorks Manage, etc. We really pride ourselves being highly respected for expertise both on the business side of PLM, bringing best practices in the industry for managing data, for doing your digital transformations, managing your digital twins and digital threads, along with technical expertise, being on the forefront of the latest technical architectures out there, whether it be databases, programming languages, DevOps infrastructure, etc. We are what's considered a SolidWorks certified professional service company. So what that means is we're not a VAR, we don't sell software, but we're recognized and certified by SolidWorks to provide professional services and solutions on their products. We're also a Dassault Systems business partner, and again, pride ourselves always being on the forefront of new technologies, new best practices, new paradigms within the industry. And as today we're going to be talking about the SolidWorks PDM to SharePoint integration, we really do all aspects of PDM, PLM implementations, everything from discovery workshops and assessments to general implementations, customizations, data integrations like we'll be talking about today, data migrations, and training and support. So with that, let's first talk about SharePoint. For those of you that are not super familiar with SharePoint, SharePoint is a product from Microsoft. It really comes in two flavors, both an on-premise version and a hosted or SharePoint 365 version that Microsoft hosts for you. And a lot of this information is right off of the SharePoint website, but basically organizations use SharePoint to create websites for a secure place to store, organize, share, and collaborate information. And then we further say SharePoint is a focused web browser-based workspace to help create collaborations within and across units, departments, and sites within an organization. Mainly used, maybe with share in the name, for sharing documents and other information in one place. There's an ability to add some business processes and intelligence to it. ability, obviously, for searching and accessing information and data. There is some integrations to Microsoft Office applications, and we see it as obviously a cost-effective platform for building scalable and robust web applications to better share data. And SharePoint is really embedded within Microsoft Teams. Obviously, Teams is very prevalent within the industry today for collaborating. And when you create teams for managing documents, a lot of times it's SharePoint in the back end. So all that being said, we see increasing demand for accessing PLM or PDM data and functionality from within SharePoint. One of the key components of SharePoint is what's considered the SharePoint list. And usually when we interact with SharePoint, normally we're acting with a SharePoint list. So it's an out-of-the-box component of SharePoint. It's a collection of similar items that share the same metadata schema. So within the SharePoint list, it's all going to have the same columns, whether it'll be a title, in this case complete, description, revision column. They'll all share the same titles or columns of data being managed. And the columns may have documents attached to the fields, or it could just be metadata of column information. It really resembles a database table and structure where you have columns and then actual data, which are each additional row within the list. It can support various field types, whether they're characters, integers, multi-pick values, drop-down values, dates, etc. And can support various organizing of the data, whether you're filtering it, sorting it, grouping it, etc. It can handle those different ways to organize data. You can through SharePoint enable triggers that interact with events. So when you add data to your SharePoint list, update data, delete data, it can run additional customizations to do additional tasks. It supports workflows where we can have status changes, from a release to an obsolete status, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as the presentation continues. And then it supports content types, so it has some intelligence to understand if it's an MS Word file or an Excel file or a PDF file. For opening it up in the native application. So it understands certain file types as well. Though, the key point is SharePoint is not a PDM or a PLM system. So, we get requests that say, customers, they don't have SolidWorks PDM, but they say, hey, we want to manage SolidWorks in SharePoint. And my answer is okay, but probably that's not the recommended way to go about managing your SolidWorks data. So, these are the key points why I say you should not be managing your SolidWorks data in SharePoint. First of all, there's no file or structural link concept in SharePoint. SharePoint doesn't understand an assembly that has relationships to parts and subassemblies, or a drawing that has relationships to parts and assemblies as well, or any other SolidWorks relationship. It does not support out-of-the-box CAD viewing. So if you wanted to view the SolidWorks file, you cannot natively view it within SharePoint. There is some redlining functionality, which makes use of Microsoft Office, but you cannot view native SolidWorks or CAD data within SharePoint. The documents, when you do load data to SharePoint, the documents that you load are housed within the SharePoint database. They're not in a separate vault structure on the operating system. So with SolidWorks files that can get large, fairly large, that database size can grow fairly fast. So you probably best practice to not manage those files within the database for SolidWorks files. As SharePoint has many options, they're more broad than depth, meaning you can do a lot of things, but they're not depth, focused on SolidWorks data. And if you wanted to put SolidWorks data within SharePoint and have some of that functionality, you would need heavy, customization, which is probably not worth it. And then finally, there's no out-of-the-box SolidWorks integration with SharePoint. So, it's not like from SolidWorks you can say save to SharePoint or check out from SolidWorks. SharePoint does not understand SolidWorks configurations or toolbox. Like I said, it doesn't understand the SolidWorks relationships and dependencies. There's no bill of material structure. Really, there's no, indented structure for any bill of material management, and no native interface for any of the PDM functions. So, for all those reasons, we would say, if you need to manage SolidWorks data, really you need a PDM PLM system like SolidWorks PDM. SharePoint is a great collaboration tool, but is not geared to managing the SolidWorks data. And my final point here is, I have heard there's some, third parties out there that have built SolidWorks integrations within SharePoint. It's actually been a while since I looked, but I've never heard any good things or have them be prominent within the market. So, if there are third parties that, that say they have the integrations, I would say, definitely prove them out and test them before going down that route. As we're talking about today, if you do want to use SharePoint and SolidWorks together, we really believe in a SolidWorks PDM to SharePoint integration. So what are some of the key requirements that we come across when we are faced with customers needing to integrate SolidWorks and SharePoint? Basically they want to ensure consistency and lifecycle integrity. So they want to go to one place, to look at the data and make sure that that data is consistent and up to date, and something that's released in one system will definitely be released in the other system. They want to reduce, ad hoc and potential complications from specific users creating their own solutions or manual entry. So we talk about, if you don't have an integration today and you have users within your organization using SharePoint and you have other users like engineers using SolidWorks PDM, how do they get data from one system to the other system today? Well, probably the easy answer is they manually, upload that data to SharePoint. They manually fill in information like metadata to that system, and we really see that as a waste of valuable engineering time. They shouldn't be doing data entry where their engineers are high paid people, and they should really be focusing on engineering work. Now, the second issue is, like any human, they're prone to mistakes. You type in a wrong value, you type in a wrong revision, and now you have, out of sync data that could cause, future costs, future issues down the road. So, eliminating that redundancy and manual data entry is a key point with that. So, these other points, kind of repeat what I said, but really reduces engineering time by automatically publishing data to SharePoint, reduces any possible errors for manual data entry, and overall, it really improves the efficiency throughout the whole engineering process. It puts, moving data or syncing data with one system, totally relying on the computer system and not on any human intervention. So, that being said, why do companies do this? Why are companies asking for such integrations? It's really we see it as an excellent access and utilization of PDM and SharePoint data. So now that data, that was before, exposed side by side, maybe in two different systems, can now be available in one system, being SharePoint. And to pause and just get a little commentary here is, when we're obviously talking about a SolidWorks PDM to SharePoint integration, there's different ways to skin the cat. Maybe the answer is don't use SharePoint at all and use SolidWorks PDM as your core repository and have all users, go into SolidWorks PDM to access all the data in one place. That being said, that's not always applicable, whether it's because of license cost, because of where users are physically located, etc. It might be because SharePoint is already adopted within the organization. So there's many reasons why it makes sense to integrate, but there's always other options out there as well, as such as just using one system to house all relevant data. But to go back to the points, why do companies integrate? As mentioned, it really exposes side-by-side data that might have been only available in separate systems, i.e. the user who has a login to SolidWorks PDM and then a separate login to Microsoft SharePoint. Let's eliminate that. Facilitate business and engineering processes, combining data from both platforms in a single business process while maintaining data integrity. Today maybe certain data is already being managed in SharePoint, but the SharePoint user still needs engineering data. So now we can integrate that engineering data into SharePoint and then have them access that data in one place. Preserve and utilize existing data. No need for large-scale data migrations or duplications across platforms. Like I said, if you had SharePoint today and you had SolidWorks PDM and the answer was, let's just use SolidWorks PDM, then perhaps you would need to migrate SharePoint data into SolidWorks PDM. But if you didn't want to do that or didn't want to conduct that exercise for a number of reasons, we can integrate the data and keep them in the separate places, but still allow the SharePoint user to access the data. Today, with the latest the latest SolidWorks PDM web solution, it very well may be accessible on mobile or web devices, portable devices, but SharePoint is mobile dependent. So if data is in SharePoint, it can be exposed to mobile users. And we can also, as part of integrating data, convert native CAD to viewable files so that they can be viewed in SharePoint or other downstream systems that don't view the native CAD system, native CAD files. So what are different integration points that we see? And really, there's three what we come across, three key integration points that we deal with. The first is, and probably these go in order of what users are looking for. The first one is publishing PDM data to SharePoint. So per what we consider a PDM task, we'll take data that gets released in SharePoint, and get data that gets released in SolidWorks PDM, and automatically publish it to specific SharePoint document libraries to be accessed in SharePoint. And we'll demo that a little bit later in the presentation. Another area where we see integration points are syncing workflow states between PDM and SharePoint. So obviously in SolidWorks PDM, you have your workflow with various states. In SharePoint, you can put statuses on the data, and by doing a change state in SolidWorks PDM, it can change the status in SharePoint, or vice versa. By doing a status change in SharePoint, we can change the state in SolidWorks PDM. And then finally, we can build what's considered custom PDM web parts, which is kind of your own widget that would sit inside of SharePoint and do specific custom functionality from SharePoint interacting with SolidWorks PDM. So the first integration point that we deal with and that we'll demo is, as I mentioned, the ability to publish both originally and converted to derived outputs, whether it's a PDF or a step file from SolidWorks PDM to SharePoint. So, on release, you can release a SolidWorks structure, and every drawing in that structure can be converted to a PDF file, and then those PDF files, with their corresponding metadata, like part number, revision description, show up in SharePoint. Through this integration, you can configure what metadata mappings of PDM variables get mapped to the different SharePoint columns. You can configure, where in SharePoint that data goes, what different document libraries it goes to. You can configure different conversion types, whether you're converting drawings to PDFs, SolidWorks files to step files, other CAD files, to PDFs, or publishing the native files. You have the ability to create subfolders within SharePoint to better organize the data, if that makes sense. And per publishing the data to SharePoint, you can control whether that data is overwritten in SharePoint or creates an additional version of the file in SharePoint, similar to SolidWorks PDM. And finally, you can configure that integration to happen based on a change state or a user-defined, right mouse button click action within SolidWorks PDM. The next scenario, we talk about our change states between SharePoint and PDM. So upon a change state in PDM, it would perform a change state in SharePoint. So obviously when we do one of these change states, the status column in SharePoint would change. We have the ability to map different state names between SharePoint and PDM. So, if the state name is waiting on approval in SolidWorks PDM, the status name in SharePoint could be in progress. So we can map the different names. We can prevent doing a change state in SolidWorks PDM if the corresponding data in SharePoint is not in the right state. And these can be in reverse. So we can have PDM sort of control SharePoint or SharePoint control PDM to control, state synchronizations between the two systems. And then finally, we can create custom SharePoint integration web parts where we have kind of our own look and feel with inside of SharePoint. So they can be constructed to present PDM functionality to SharePoint users. In most cases, they need to be hosted in a SharePoint site. So the on-premise versus the cloud solution, becomes more applicable. We could also build these as standalone web applications as well. It gives them ability to interact natively in both PDM and SharePoint. Obviously, PDM is spelled wrong, and provides customized document access. These are more full-scale customization solutions than more generic solutions. So some user scenarios, kind of put everything together that we talked about together. The first scenario is what we consider centralized data access. In this case, PDM is tightly integrated into the product development and other business processes. Corporate IT deploys SharePoint to support, manufacturing, business, and other non-technical collaborations. So, it's being used for, let's say, non-engineering groups within the organization. Such non-technical departments may require access to technical data, i.e. SolidWorks data. For example, the purchasing department may require access to PDM data as well as ERP data from a central location or application. i.e. maybe SharePoint. So in this case, PDM data is accessed across two systems inefficiently without an integration. It's time-consuming, tedious for all the various users that need to access all the different data to get to it. The ad hoc processes are going on, possibly manually moving data across systems, etc. But by putting in a way to publish data to SharePoint, it can allow these non-technical users to select and access PDM data in a secure manner without requiring any extensive PDM knowledge or PDM licenses. Another scenario where we maybe talk about a supply chain scenario. Again, a SharePoint site is created as a central resource for collaborating and sharing data, with the supply chain, suppliers, and vendors. The SharePoint site is located outside the corporate firewall to provide access to controlled data, and these external suppliers and vendors can access it. Suppliers and customers may access, specifications, data sheets, manuals, participate in workflows, and access central business documents through this portal. And then, PDM data is published to the site and released for these external users to access and view it and to do their work within the whatever supplier vendor relationship or work they're doing within your organization. So those are subsets of each other, but two scenarios where SharePoint's kind of the central point being used to access data, and at least the engineering data from SOLIDWORKS PDM is being pushed there for data access. So let's look at a quick present or demonstration of this. And I don't think you'll hear it. I'm going to zoom through this a little bit. This is kind of the same features and functions that I mentioned between our publish integration. All right, bear with me. All right, here we go. So we start off in SharePoint, and to go back, we see that there's really no data yet existing in SharePoint. Nothing's being published yet. We look at SOLIDWORKS PDM, and we see it's in the under editing state, and we will release this data, and we'll see that it'll now show up in SharePoint. So we're transitioning it now to approve. So now we got to finally transition it to the release state. And now what will happen is a SOLIDWORKS PDM task will kick off, and it's going to convert the drawings. So it created this task within SOLIDWORKS PDM, which will convert the PDFs, the drawings to PDFs in the background, and then publishing it to SharePoint. So all this will happen on the task server, so everything is transparent to the end user. And so as you can see, the task finished completely. So now the data has been published. So now if we switch over to SharePoint, we can see that the data now shows up automatically with the correct metadata of that data showing up. So you can see the revision, state, who did the publishing. For each drawing, we converted it to a PDF. You can click on it and view the PDF as appropriately. And then right-click, we can also right-click on the file and enable PDF and upload a SharePoint command to do individual or manual publishing tasks. So, in addition to that, because we make use of the SOLIDWORKS PDM task functionality, email notifications can go out when something's been published. If there was an issue publishing the data, an email notification can go out to an administrator to look into it. So, so we can get general notifications of published data as well as appropriate. So to reiterate some integration benefits, we really believe a SOLIDWORKS PDM SharePoint integration extends the reach of the product lifecycle and document and CAD collaboration across boundaries. It really leverages existing IT strategies and infrastructures, especially if that infrastructure makes use of SharePoint and SOLIDWORKS PDM. It better connects people's resources and knowledge for better and faster access. Again, really geared to the non-technical, the non-engineering groups that don't have access to SOLIDWORKS PDM today, or easy access to release data today from PDM. And can optimize team performance and synergy for maximum project, product, and program achievements. Again, everyone is focusing on their jobs, their specialty, not doing non-value added tasks like uploading data, sending data, typing in metadata fields. Within conclusion, a PDM SharePoint integration really harnesses the powerful features from two complementary collaborative systems and a rich user experience. The integration facilitates the adoption of PDM by SharePoint users by giving them that access, but not necessarily having them need to learn or use PDM, and can help integrate, and expand products and management options that may have been side by side, not connected, and now can be used to ultimately simplify both the engineering and business process together. So with that, I want to say thank you and open it up to questions. I see we have some questions already typed in. The first question is, does 2020 PDM support this integration to SharePoint? So and again, if I'm saying something wrong, please correct me, but there's no out of the box from SOLIDWORKS integration to SharePoint. But the solution we showed, yes, is supported on SOLIDWORKS PDM 2020 to integrate with SharePoint and will work, maybe this is the follow-up question, will work with both the on-premise version of SharePoint or the online SharePoint 365 version. Next question. Is this being recorded and can we share it with others users? So yes, this is being recorded. After anyone who attends the webinar should get an email recording of the webinar. And then you should be able to record it. If not, for some reason, per my information, please reach out to me and I can definitely get a recording to you. Next question, how long does it take to set up the integration? So really, it's probably a couple of hours. Obviously, we're assuming that SharePoint and a document library is already set up and configured, but it's simply setting up the integration, which is usually enabling a SOLIDWORKS PDM add-in, and then configuring the mappings of the PDM variables to the SharePoint column sites. Next question, can this be deployed in-house by our IT DevOps, and is it licensed per user? So the answer is yes, it can be deployed by your IT team. Probably it's strongly recommended we assist with the deployment. Like I said, spend a couple hours to show them how to enable the add-in and how to enable the configurations. But yes, anyone who is a PDM admin, SharePoint administrator can do it. It's a licensed per site, so it's really a one-time fee, and then there is no specific user licenses. It's kind of a one-time solution fee for the solution. Next question. Are you able to search in SharePoint based on the metadata and the PDM data? Yes. So if you're mapping PDM metadata to SharePoint, that metadata then can be searchable in SharePoint per the out-of-the-box SharePoint functionality. How current do you stay with SolidWorks? When will are you going to be supporting the latest version of SolidWorks, i.e., SolidWorks 2023? So yes, our solution is developed in such a way that it's fairly backwards and forwards compatible, and based on how SolidWorks and SharePoint configure their systems, the solution normally works with the latest version of both SolidWorks and SharePoint. Obviously, we'll test and verify that for any customer on the latest version, but we've never had an issue with any upgrades to the latest version of SolidWorks or SharePoint breaking the integration. So yes, it is fairly stable, and we'll work with you obviously if an upgrade were to break the integration. Is the revision synced between PDM and SharePoint? So yes. Now manually things could happen to break it, but when the integration happens, we can map the revision value from SolidWorks PDM to SharePoint. So as long as the user is not changing in SharePoint, that value is synced from the revision between those systems. Someone commented that it looked like a great solution, so thanks for posting that. That is the questions for now. I hope so there's a licensing question. I would say let's take licensing questions offline, but usually there's a one-time fee, and then we'll support going forward. The reason I don't want to say prices right now, a lot of times the solution is there's a standard price for what you saw, but a lot of times customers need additional or slightly different functionality based on their processes, and one of the things the solution has is the ability to configure it or adapt it per the out of the box for specific unique scenarios, and that may slightly increase the price. So it really depends on your scenario, but based on what you want to do, we can talk and review it, and I can give you a price. And I'd say it's probably within the 5K to 10K range, probably closer to the 5K, but it may be dependent on your unique scenario. Well, thank you everyone for attending this presentation. I hope it was useful and valuable. If you have any questions, like I said, please keep on typing them. A new one just came in. I'll be happy to address it. But feel free to reach out to me directly for any additional questions, additional discussions around such as SharePoint integration, additional demos, etc. I'm definitely here to work with you. Though one more question came in, does SharePoint sync to EPM data via SQL? So we're not syncing data at the SQL level. We're syncing data at the the API level using the SolidWorks and SharePoint APIs. Technically, we could do stuff at the SQL level. We know table structures and whatnot, but we chose to use the API level, which is a little bit, I'd say, safer and recommended both from a SolidWorks PDM and a SharePoint point of view. All right, once again, thank you very much for attending. My contact information is on the screen. Please reach out to me with any questions or comments. And with that, I'll say have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you more if this is of interest to you. Thank you.